Hey guys, Coach Ambrose here. Hope all is well with you today. We got another breakdown video for you, and today we got my man Big Z. Let's get right into it. So Zaid, who's on our 13-year-old Braves team, sent this in about probably a week ago. So Zaid, thank you very much for sending it in and sharing your swing with us and allowing us to talk a little shop with everyone. And you know, like I said, hopefully the goal, you know, for these videos is to be able to share and have you pick up one or two things that you're able to apply to your training at home, and for everyone watching, one or two things that maybe they can apply to their swing and their training at home as well. So again, thank you very much for sharing. Now, before we dive into it, first let's play the swing in its entirety so we see the full picture. So nice balanced, controlled swing, good rhythm to it, good posture, good angles. Yeah, a lot of good things here. And Zaid probably sent me 4 or 5 different clips, and the first thing I want to dive into here was consistent throughout every clip that he sent me, and that's his gather and load and his stride. All right, so let's go a little bit slower and break it down here. So in previous videos, I believe last week, we talked about what we should be doing in terms of our weight transfer forward and our separation back with our hands at our gather and load. All right. And if you watch, if I play this slowly, not only does Zaid have a really good weight transfer with his step and get to a really solid balanced position as a stride foot lands, he's got great rhythm back with his hands in terms of the space and separation that he's creating with them. All right. So as we go in slow-mo here, shifts weight back. As his stride goes forward, you're going to start to see that front elbow stretch that we've talked about. Hands are getting loaded back. Let me see if I can get to landing. All right, so his heel's down, he's flat. Again, body's in a really good balanced position. I mean, just look at his lower half. It's in a strong athletic position. All right, if he needed to fire at this baseball, he's able to go right away. No doubt about it. The separation that we talked about in terms of our hands getting back, again, and I apologize, my draw tool isn't working today, but good stretch in his front side elbow, great angle knob down to the catcher, hands are loaded back, great spacing here. All right, so at landing, Zaid is in a, just my opinion, a really good hitting position. Plenty of space back with his hands, good gather and load, good weight transfer. All right, Zaid, one thing I want to touch on, if I go back just real quick, go back a little bit further. So when you're weight transferring back, all right, one thing I want you to try to do off the tee next time you're hitting is when we're gathering loading back, I want you to try to feel it more in like your hip and your back quad, as opposed to, if you notice how everything's kind of stacking over your back foot, our back knee, front foot, everything's lined up pretty much together here. All right. When we talk about our gather and load and shifting weight back, usually what I tell hitters, I want them to feel it more in their hip flexor, their backside hip, and kind of feel that gather and load there. So as they start to transition forward, all right, it's more likely that everything's going to be a little bit smoother, a little bit easier. And as you can see, that weight transfer is going to be able to gain ground. Now, I say this, you do a very good job of gaining ground forward. You get to a great hitting position. All right. We just want to make sure that we don't want to feel that gather and load into our back foot, if that makes sense. We want to feel it more in our back quad and our back hip. That way we're a little bit more explosive as we continue to progress forward into our stride and eventually into our hip rotation. It'll probably feel a little bit smoother and easier for you too. All right. So again, a little small, minor thing, but something just to keep in mind. And if we do it right, what you'll see is this back knee stay inside your back foot. And I usually like to see this front foot stay just a little bit ahead of the knee. I usually don't want to see the the front foot stacking right over the back foot. Excuse me if I said that right. Did I say that right? I don't know. Front foot stacked over the back foot. There we go. All right. All right. So let's continue though. Like I said, even getting there, we do a good job transferring weight, gaining ground. The other part in terms of not only creating space with your hands, you have great rhythm with your hands. If we go back just a little bit, relaxed hands. Now, as soon as the stride starts going forward, you're going to see the hands getting to a load position. Stretching that front elbow. Let's get to landing here. Whoops. Go back one frame. All right, so heels down, we're flat. We're ready to rotate. And again, hands are in that position. Sometimes what I'll see from especially young hitters is their stride foot will land, but I'll still see their hands still trying to create space and they're still gaining ground back. I like to see the hands get loaded back and find that load position by the time that stride foot lands. That way everything's in rhythm, ready to go, ready to fire to the baseball as soon as I start to trigger my lower half. All right, now, I watched some of these videos ahead of time, obviously. The first thing I wanted to talk about, and again, this is very common, is trying to create some type of separation between our lower half and our upper half rotation. All right, so once I continue to go forward, what you're going to start to see is Zaid's knob and his hands creep forward just a little bit too early. So as soon as you start to see his back hip and back knee trigger, you're going to see the hands start to pull back in towards his body. Notice his elbow's kind of already down. It's pulling his hands back into his back shoulder as opposed to keeping that space. So as a result, as Zaid continues to rotate, oftentimes you'll find hitters, their hands and back hip are connected and rotating as one, and we don't really create that stretch or that separation between our lower and upper body, which is ultimately going to create whip and speed with our hands and barrel through the zone. So if I go back again real quick, whoops, a little bit too fast there. So we're coming in, stride foot down, and again, notice, I mean, there's still a little bit of space here, but if I go one or two more clicks, you're going to watch and see how the knob and the hands get just ahead of the back hip. And as soon as our hands get ahead of our hip rotation, our hips will never catch up. Our hands will always lead the rest of the way through the swing, and we don't want that. We want hips leading hands through the zone. All right, so if I go one or two more frames, let's see if I can get it. Yeah, see, I clicked literally just one more frame. Notice the knob and the hands are starting to push ahead. I'd say we're about 50% through our hip rotation. And again, notice our knob and our hands are starting to get out in front. And again, it's you're going to start to see the hands really take over throughout the swing, and you're going to lose a lot of power that you're trying to generate with your lower half as a hitter once these hands get ahead of the lower body. All right, and as we continue, you can see the hands essentially arrive to the baseball right before the hips do. All right, so a comparison, one that I really like in terms of creating that stretch and that separation is Mookie Betts. All right, so let's get to the same position that Zaid and Betts get to at landing. Go a little bit further. So Betts is at landing. All right, so foot's down. You can almost see his back hip and back knee are already trying to trigger. Notice where his hands still are. All right, and if I go a couple more clicks, just that initial turn right there, if I can go do that again. So boom, watch this first initial, like, just tiny pivot with his back hip and his back knee, and then watch where his hands still are. See how the hands are still loaded back? Now if I continue, hands are still back. You can still see the stretch in this front side elbow. And then as I continue, you'll continue to see the back hip and the back knee lead the hands and barrel through the zone. Keep going, keep going. So his hands and his knob, more specifically, have just caught up to his back hip. And we could argue that Betts at this point has probably already completed pretty much his lower half rotation. His hips are pointed in the middle of the field. Back knees turned all the way through. You might see a little bit more of a pivot and turn as he goes through with his hands, especially this clip. I think he's maybe, if I have the right clip, I think maybe he's a little bit out in front and ahead of this pitch. I mean, he puts it over the green monster, so it doesn't matter. But if you notice, his hips are pretty much all the way clear. His belly button's facing out front. Hips are turned towards the pitcher in the middle of the field. So his hips are now leading hands through the zone. All right. So as you can see, his hips stayed pointed middle, and now his hands are actually progressing out front to attack the baseball. All right, and if we go back to Zaid, again, this is probably a good spot to stop on. Notice, again, the knee's trying to turn, and knee's trying to do the right thing, Zaid. But this back hip is going to struggle to get forward the more the hands get further ahead of our back hip, all right? So if I go to the big cam, all right, this is usually a simple, easy drill. You don't even need a bat. I'll tell you what, I'm not even going to do it with a bat, all right? I'm just going to do it with my hands, all right? And you can do this on your own, or if you got mom or dad or a sibling that can help you out, is you're essentially, I want you to get to your stride position. So you're going to complete your stride, hands are lower back, stretching the front side elbow. We're ready to go, all right? Now, where we're at in this swing here, all right, is as soon as we see Zaid's back hips start to fire and back knees start to fire, you're going to see his hands pull in, like his hands are trying to stay with his hips, all right? And at a certain point throughout our rotation with our body, our hands are always going to be quicker to get out front as opposed to our hip rotation. That's why we create that separation that Zaid has at the beginning at his landing, all right, is so that we are creating that separation and we're actually allowing our back hip and our lower half to get ahead and ultimately lead our hands through the zone. All right, so usually a drill, what I like to do is you can either do it with a bat. I've got a bat right here, or if you don't want to use a bat, you just want to do this in your room for a few reps. Just interlock your fingers, all right? Like I said, get to your stride position. And what I want you to try to feel, I almost want you to pretend like someone's holding your hands back here as you try to start your hip rotation. So our first movement isn't forward with our hands. It's like my hands are trying to stay back where they were originally loaded to, if that makes sense, all right? And like I said, almost feel like someone's holding your hands back there, or if mom or dad can hold your hands here and then trigger your back hip and your lower half rotation. As you continue that process, and the more you feel, you should almost feel that tension build in your back hip and your back quad here, all right, and that hip flexor. If we're truly doing it, if our top half's rotating with our lower half, we'll never feel tension in this side of the body, all right? So if we're doing it right, we'll feel just that little bit of tension where my back hip's trying to go forward, and now again, I've created that gap and that separation between my back hip and my back, my back hip and my hands here. And again, the more I can do that, again, now my hands are following my hips through the zone, and more importantly, now I'm building that tension, so I'm going to create that whip and that release with my hands and barrel through the zone. And again, if you want to do it with a bat, like I said, you can get to your load position, and again, the first movement shouldn't be with my hands and my knob forward with my hips. I want them to stay back, all right? You create a great space, all right? If we go back, let me go back to Zaid here. Let me go to his landing here. Whoops. Again, Zaid, we create a great separation back, stretching the elbow, hands are loaded back here. Now, you created great space. Now, don't take that space away by allowing your hands to try to pull back in and work ahead of your hips, all right? When you're hitting off the tee, really emphasize this back hip getting ahead of your knob and your hands, all right? And challenge yourself a little bit. Again, you're hitting off the tee, the ball's not moving. Challenge yourself a little bit. See how far you can allow this back hip to get ahead of your hands, and really try to create some tension and some feel in this backside hip and backside leg compared to our upper body rotation, all right? So that was point number one that I want to talk about. And again, very, very common in young hitters where you'll see everything kind of rotate all as one, all right? We don't want our upper body and our lower body working as one. It becomes robotic, and again, we're not going to create maximum speed, maximum whip through the zone with our hands and barrel if everything's just rotating through together, all right? So that was point number one, Zaid. You do if I can get hitters here in this position, this is half the battle. This is the hard part. is understanding how to transfer that weight forward, obviously, and to create that separation back. Now you just got to keep the space, man. That's it. Just keep the space with your hands. Don't cheat yourself. Don't pull them back into this back shoulder. Keep them back here. Feel this back hip get ahead of your hands, and try to feel this back hip lead the hands all the way through the zone. All right, so that was point number one that I saw. All right. And point number two, I guarantee, I would venture a guess. I'd love to hear, and Zaid, follow up with me in a week or so once you see this video and are able to try out these things. What I want you to try to send me, all right, is a follow-up video. And I almost guarantee the point number two that I have written down that I wanted to talk about might even be fixed once we fix point number one, which is keeping the hands back. All right. So point number two I wanted to get to, and again, very, very common. All right. Is because Zaid lost his spacing, his hands are back inside his body basically as he's swinging and rotating through. His body's going to try to create space another way. All right. And a lot of times what happens is usually in this front side elbow here. All right. So what you'll see is as we continue to go, see how that elbow's starting to lift off the chest. And we're at almost point of contact. Barrel's with the top hand. Notice how much bend is in our front elbow and where our elbow's pointing. So we're pointing almost back here to this bush behind Zaid. All right. As a hitter, we don't necessarily want that front elbow in this position for a couple of reasons. Okay. Number one, it's going to start to drag this barrel. I think we talked about it in the breakdown video last week. The more my front side elbow, my bottom hand tried to lead the way, the less release, the less whip and speed I'm actually going to create with my top hand barrel through the zone, because now my bottom hand and my front side elbow are trying to be the dominant one, as opposed to I want my top hand dominant. That's what's going to create that release with the barrel and stay through the baseball all the way through the zone. All right. So we want to try to keep this elbow from bending and pulling off our chest. So if I go a little bit further, and if you watch, again, I apologize, I don't have my draw tool, but you'll start to see this barrel get on the outside part of the baseball, and you're going to see it release, not necessarily into the net in front of Zaid here, but you're going to start to see it release towards this brick wall behind him. All right, so as I go through, see how the barrel is, let me see if I can get that a little bit slower. So coming through. Like if I just play that clip right there, watch. Let's start with that. Let's watch Zaid's front side elbow. See how it's trying to pull off his chest to create space so his hands can get inside this baseball and have his barrel to get out front. Almost kind of like it's almost like a shrug position. You can actually see the shoulders kind of shrug up a little bit. Because in Zaid's head, he knows what he's supposed to. That's where his hands should be. His hands are trying to stay tight to his body. I completely understand where Zaid's trying to get to, in this swing. But because we lost that spacing and we pulled the hands back into our body and now they're starting to get out front, our brain is trying to tell our body to create space another way throughout the swing. And that's why you're starting to see that elbow lift and pull towards this bush behind Zaid. And then as we continue the swing, notice how the barrel swings towards the stone wall behind him here as opposed to releasing out front here. So again, if I use bets for an example, let me go here. All right, let's get to landing first. All right, let's watch Bet's front side elbow. So good stretch. And then he's going to try to maintain that stretch throughout the swing. And again, if we are keeping our hands behind our hips, if we're allowing our hips to lead our hands through, you'll see this elbow stay obtuse. All right, it'll be at an obtuse angle. It won't pull back in like this. It'll stay in a good position in front of the chest. It'll stay long. And as you continue to go through, Again, we're almost at point of contact. Notice his elbow is almost straight. It's got a little bit of an angle there. Again, I'd say obtuse angle, all right? But notice it's not bent and pulling towards the crowd behind him here. It's staying in front. So now as he continues to extend through, you're going to see the top hand and barrel release here as opposed to his front elbow pulling hands and barrel out of the zone and towards the third base side. So here to point of contact. Again, maybe that's even better clip. Look how straight that arm is. Right in front of his chest. Top hand is the dominant hand, releasing the barrel out front. And then as we continue to go, notice how everything releases straight out front. Now, at this point, all right, and this is why I wanted to use Betts as an example, because this was a great clip to show not only separation between our hips and our hands, but, and this is something I get a lot, is people asking, well, you know, you'll see Betts have this elbow towards his finish off his chest, and it lifts off and pulls towards the third base side. And the other one that people often use is Mike Trout. Mike Trout will do that. And I would argue, yes, you can probably find a swing or two here and there where those guys are a little bit, I would argue it's probably an inner half pitch that they're trying to kind of cheat to get their hands and barrel out front to attack the baseball. But the majority of the time, and I'll show you here in a second, it's about where their front elbow is at point of contact. So again, if I go back, like here, so ball's meeting bat. Elbow is not off his chest. If we go back to where Zaid is, go back a little bit. Whoops. Go back just a hair. See how we haven't even made contact with the baseball, and notice that elbow starting to pull and try to create space. All right. We don't want to be there at point of contact or before point of contact. All right. After contact, then we can have a discussion. For example, contact, and then as his hands go through the baseball, that's when you see the elbow start to pull off. The same with, if I pull up, Mike Trout, for example, all right? You won't see that gap for the most part. Again, there's probably swings you can find, all right? And actually, I think I found one of Mike Trout where he's like, I think it was a down and away pitch that he's a freak. He's a freak athlete. But essentially it was a down and away pitch that he like cranked his front side elbow, dropped the barrel head and his top hand to get it out front. I don't know how he did it. It's unbelievable. But majority of Mike Trout swings that you look up, you'll see, you go forward a little bit to point of contact. Again, elbow in front of chest, obtuse angle, the elbow's not pulling, through contact. And as his hands go to his finish point, that's when you start to see this elbow leaving the chest and starting to lift up a little bit. All right, so if it's something that's happening after contact, for me personally, not as big of a deal. I'd like to see that arm stay as straight as possible. I usually don't like to see that front elbow yank pretty much at any point until we're ready to have our hands finish back over our shoulder. But we can at least have a conversation that there's plenty of hitters that you'll see this. Another one's Nolan Arenado, right? Funky finish with that front side elbow as he finishes his hands through the. But same thing for him. You won't see, for the most part, his front elbow coming off his body, all right, as he's trying to swing. I know it's kind of tough to see in this camera. I keep trying to look at this camera. I'm trying to do an example. But again, for me, it's what angle and where this elbow is at point of contact as opposed to after contact. Now, if we go back to Zaid. Now, if Zaid got to point of contact, let me go forward just a little bit here. So if Zaid was getting his top hand through the baseball, and then we start to see this front elbow separate and lift off his chest. Again, now we're kind of nitpicking from there at that point. But what we're doing, Zaid, is once we get here, all right, we're kind of losing our leverage with our upper body, all right? And again, it's going to start to pull our hands and barrel around towards our pull side. Now, one thing that is incredible that you actually do on this swing is you stay palm up. Like, so for instance, we're palm up here at contact. Even with this elbow pulling, usually a lot of times when, as a hitter, when we see that elbow pull, we'll see the top hand roll over. Do a good job staying palm up, man. That way the barrel stays below your hands are above. And then at least we've got the barrel releasing somewhat through the baseball. It's not going to be a snap hook. Like, can you get base hits this way? Absolutely. But you do a number of really good things throughout the process of the swing. And again, if we just keep the spacing with our hands, if we continue to attack with our lower half the way we do, good stride, good weight transfer, and we can just get your hands separated from your hips and not allow your hands to be ahead of your lower half, I think we're going to have way more pop off the bat, man. And I think you're going to find seeing your hands attack through the baseball a lot easier. A lot easier. As opposed to sometimes it, like this, for example, it almost looks like you're trying to fight to keep your hands inside and stay palm up because you're a good hitter and you know that's where you're supposed to be, is inside and palm up through the baseball. Good angle with our bat here. I think if we keep this spacing here, all right, and don't pull our hands back into our body right away, and we able to keep that separation, I think we're going to fix part B, which is what I was talking about with this front side elbow. All right, and I'll leave you with this, a drill. Let me go to the full screen here. All right, a drill to kind of overemphasize this, and you can do this off the tee, is find an old like dish towel. Don't use mom and dad's good dish towels, all right? Don't get in trouble. All right, but find an old rag or an old towel, okay? And move this chair out of the way, all right? What you're going to do is you're going to get to your stretch position here, all right? So we're in our stride position. I like to do this from a still position. That way there's a little bit less movement, all right? So essentially you're in your position that you just took your stride. You're in a hitting position ready to go. Hands are loaded back, all right? Same position we were just talking about a second ago in the video, all right? Really good gathering load. Now, what I want you to do is to put off a few swings off the tee, and if you notice as you start to swing, if that towel starts to drop right away because you're pulling your hands back in and this elbow's starting to lift, you're going to see that towel drop almost instantly. As soon as you start your swing, that towel's going to drop well before you even have a chance to get your top hand and barrel out front to attack the baseball. All right, so what we want to try to do is feel this towel stay connected, and ultimately we're kind of exaggerating this front elbow staying connected and tight to our body through the swing. So I should be able to swing through. I get to point of contact. Notice the towel's still attached. If you can see that, there you go. All right, and then as we extend through, that's when our elbow can lift off our body, and if the towel falls at that point, that's fine. All right, if it falls after contact, we're in good shape. But it's a good drill to emphasize if I'm if I'm pulling my hands in and this elbow's trying to lift up to create space, as soon as you start rotation, that towel is going to drop. As soon as you start to try to trigger your rotation to hit, that towel is going to drop well before you even have a chance to hit the baseball. So you know, oh, that elbow's trying to lead and it's getting off my body too early. All right, and then once we can put off a swing where we're swinging all the way through, the towel stays connected all the way through, and then it drops as we extend through the baseball. Now we know this elbow staying connected. If you notice the difference in the angle with my front elbow, all right, here, so I've created my stretch. Get this situated again. So stretch in my front side elbow. Now if I start to pull my hands in like we were talking about and this elbow lifts, notice how much bend I have in this front side elbow as opposed to when I keep this tight to my body, Notice it stays at that nice long obtuse angle. All right, and again, now my hands and my barrel have a much easier time, and they're going to be quicker too, working around your upper body. And again, I think you're going to find creating hand and barrel path a lot easier inside the baseball, and you're going to feel your top hand and barrel release and stay palm up through the baseball a lot easier the less you let this guy try to lead the way and get off your body. All right, so again, two very key points, very common in young hitters. We see it all the time. Again, it's just don't allow this bottom hand and more importantly this front side elbow try to lead the way. All right, and some kids in general do that on their own. For Zaid, I think it's as simple as creating this space and then keeping that space. Don't let the hands, if I go forward, don't let the hands pull back in and get ahead of the hips. Let hips lead hands. Don't let hands lead hips. That's what I'll leave you with. So, Zaid, all in all, like I said, you get to very, very good points throughout the swing. Just fine-tuning things, making sure, a lot of times what I'll say to hitters is making sure everything happens in the right order. So great stride. Now let's have hips lead the hands through the zone. Don't let hands try to lead hips through the zone. All right? Other than that, keep working hard, man. I'll tell you what, this guy is a grinder. All right? When the facility was open this winter, I used to joke with him and his dad all the time. I think they were in the facility more than I was, whether it was working out in the weight room, pitching, fielding, hitting with Coach Lyon and Coach Paulson, or just in the back working with his dad on his own, trying to incorporate the stuff that Coach Lyon and Coach Paulson talked about in their lessons. So, Zaid, awesome stuff, man. It's come a long way. All right, if I think back to when, maybe not necessarily tryouts, that's a little bit too far away, but when you were first coming in and working with Coach Lyon and Coach Paulson compared to now, like I said, there's a lot of really good things here. If we can just kind of fine-tune the couple points that I was talking about, and again, one may fix the other. You might send a video to me in a week and be like, Coach, I just kept the hands back, and all of a sudden my elbow's not trying to lift off my body to create space, and my hands feel way quicker and way easier through the zone. That's my hope. That's my goal. So a couple of things to keep in mind there. Everyone watching, a couple of things to keep in mind as well as you're working on at home. But I want to thank you guys for your time. Really appreciate it. Until next time, keep working hard, stay sharp, and hopefully sooner rather than later we can get back out onto the baseball diamond and have some fun. All right. But until then, we're going to keep putting out videos. Oh, Zaid, you're entered into the giveaway, the gift card giveaway. So again, thank you for sending in your video. If you want to submit one, I've got a ton of them now. So keep sending them in. I'm going to keep them rolling. We'll keep doing these, keep breaking them down and go from there. I have all hitting ones. If you want to send in pitching or throwing and are able to do that, please do that as well. I wouldn't mind talking about some throwing and pitching mechanics, or maybe even having one of the other coaches talk about it as well. But don't be afraid to send in those throwing and pitching mechanic videos as well. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next time.